Welcome back to Endless Money Pits. This is the final video in my favorite tool series, and today we'll be talking about my 10 favorite non-tools, which are items that I just didn't think fit into the first two videos. If you haven't seen those yet, the first video was on my top 10 favorite hand tools, and part 2 was on my top 10 favorite electric tools. I'm not here to waste anybody's time, so let's get started with tool number 1, which is my Mighty Vac fluid extractor. Is that what you call it? Fluid evacuator. I've had this thing almost as long as I've had my BMW because on that car, the oil filter is on top of the engine, so you can do a whole oil change without jacking up the car, if you have one of these. It comes with 3 different tubes of different thicknesses, so you select the one for your application, plug the other into the top of the vacuum, and start pumping. This is perfect for my BMW because the thickest tube fits right down the dipstick tube, and the vacuum will get about 99% of the oil out. It's perfect for my BMW, but when I've tried it on other cars, I've noticed it doesn't really work. For some reason, it just doesn't seem to be able to get all the oil out of other cars through the dipstick tube, but it works perfectly on mine. So I'd recommend doing a little research online to figure out if this works with your car or not before you buy one. But even if it doesn't work for changing the oil, you can still use this for other applications. Let your imagination run wild. But if you do happen to have an E46 BMW, this is a really good non-tool to have. Number 2 on today's list is an item that I wish I had gotten a lot sooner. It's a mechanic's stethoscope. It's kind of hard to demonstrate on camera for you, but it's like a doctor's stethoscope, except it uses a long metal rod to pick up vibrations on your engine instead. It's really good for figuring out where strange noises are coming from, like grinding sounds, knocking sounds, anything making noise in the engine bay that you can inspect while you're not driving. For instance, if you hear a grinding noise coming from one of the pulleys, there's not really a good way to figure out which pulley it's coming from unless you have one of these. Just put these in your ears, press the tip against the head of the bolt that runs through the center of each pulley, and it should be pretty easy to figure out which pulleys are running smoothly and which ones are rough. When you find the source of the grinding noise, then you know which pulley to replace. The first time I used this was for a similar situation, but it turned out that the bearings in my water pump were bad, so it was really good to be able to figure that out before it started causing other problems. The third item on today's list will be my Esco jack stands. At about 60 bucks a piece, buying 4 of these was kind of a big investment for me, but I always felt really nervous getting under a car that was only supported by my Harbor Freight jack stands, so I always knew investing in some better jack stands was an eventuality. Here's one of my old Harbor Freight stands for comparison. This has a ratchet system that a lot of jack stands have, and this one has a pin system. You can lock it. No matter how much you bump this thing, it's not gonna fall. That one falls pretty easily. That's not supposed to happen if there's pressure on here, but Project Farm did a video recently showing that that's not always the case. To be completely honest, he reviewed these jack stands too and found that they did not perform very well, which really surprised me because I love these things. In comparison to these are much more stable. These stands have a bigger base with flat feet, really nice welds, and I think they're made in the United States, but I'll have to double check. The Harbor Freight stand is smaller. The welds look slightly concave, which is slightly concerning. They're made in China, and while the Harbor Freight stands do have 4 feet instead of 3, they're much smaller feet and they're much closer together. I'll have to double check, but I think the winner of that comparison video was a style of jack stand like this, made by a better manufacturer in a bigger size. As you can see, this thing's just not very big. At its highest setting, this is almost at its lowest setting. Let's bring it all the way up. So the Harbor Freight stand goes to a max of about 17 inches to this point. And then the Esco jack stand goes to almost 22 inches, about 21 3/4 inches to the top. I don't recommend using either one of these on the highest setting, but it gives you an idea of what they're capable of. So Project Farm proved that this is not the safest jack stand you can use, but I'm here to say that these jack stands feel way safer than these ones. I think the rubber adds a lot to that because I'm always worried something's gonna slip off of this. But anytime I set a car on top of one of these, it seems to just kind of sink into place, and it just feels more sturdy. Number 4 on today's list is a non-tool that we all need, a creeper. When I was younger, I would just use a piece of cardboard to lay under the car, but if you've ever done that for a couple hours, you know why you don't want to do that. The first creeper I got was a plastic one from Harbor Freight, and it wasn't very long before one of the wheels broke off because I was doing something dumb with it. And then I was scooting around on that thing with a missing wheel for like 10 years before I found this, which was on sale at Lowe's for like $11 or something. I think when I checked out, they only charged me like $8. What I do like about this one in comparison is that it's padded. It has a headrest that goes up and down, and the wheels don't break off very easily. But there's actually one thing I liked more about the plastic version from Harbor Freight. It had pockets built into the sides, making it really easy to lay down your tools or whatever you were taking apart. I knew I was gonna miss that when I bought this one, but it was so cheap and it had all the wheels, I just couldn't pass it up. I just noticed that the center wheels don't line up. This one's a little further north than this one. I wonder what that's all about. Number 5 on the list is something you've already been staring at this whole time, and no, it's not me. It's my big red toolbox from Harbor Freight. It's made by US General, which is a brand sold at Harbor Freight, and I think I've had it for about 14 years now. I don't remember exactly what I paid for it, but I'm sure I got it on sale, probably between $300 and $400. And when I say it's high quality, I don't mean for the price. The drawers all roll really smoothly. They kind of pop into place so they stay closed when you're moving the toolbox around. You can lock the drawers closed. It's got a nice red powder coated finish, and each of the drawers is lined with a thin layer of foam to help keep your tools in place. The one thing that did not last on this was the piece of rubber that came with it. Over time, it got hard and brittle and just started breaking apart, so I threw it away. And then I cut out this replacement from a roll of thin rubber that I already had on hand. On a side note, I built this workbench to be the exact same height as the toolbox, and also put a layer of thin rubber on this to match. But anyway, I love this toolbox and highly recommend it. I'd buy it again in a heartbeat, but I'm not entirely sure that they still sell these. They still sell the same brand, but if you've been to Harbor Freight recently, you've probably noticed how far their toolboxes have come. They're making some really impressive stuff. I don't know too much about it, but if they've taken this and made it better, I'm all for it. If you liked that, you're gonna love number 6 on the list. It's my US General tool cart. This is like a little toolbox that I use for special projects, especially when I'm gonna be working in the driveway away from the main toolbox, because although this one has wheels, I just don't like to move it around too much. It's pretty heavy, I don't have a handle on it, and I like it to stay in its spot. This has a lid, so you can store parts in here. There's a big drawer, so you can put tools in there, or more parts, and then there's 2 more shelves underneath for whatever you want. There's also a spot over here for screwdrivers, and there's one on this side too. I like having the lid because if I'm halfway through a project and want to call it a night, I just close the lid. I can lock it if I want to, and then all the parts in here are safe, they're out of sight, and I don't have to worry about it. Number 7 on the list is my rolling stool. Oh boy, I should have made room before I did that. It's fine. It's full of tools and stuff because I'm using it to work on the motorcycle right now. I actually use it really often, which is why it's one of my favorite non-tools. To be clear, I'm not super happy with this particular rolling stool, but having one in general is really nice. This is a Pittsburgh brand from Harbor Freight, big surprise. And when I got it, it came with wheels that wouldn't spin around all the way. They'd actually hit one of the bolts underneath, so they'd only spin like 300 degrees and then they'd stop and get stuck. So eventually I ended up buying some new casters for it, and they're a little bit smaller so they fit around the bolts or the nuts or whatever's blocking them. And now it actually works properly, but it didn't until I bought new wheels for it. I don't know why. Another thing I don't particularly like about this is that the material they used for the seat is really thin, and it's got all these rips in it from just regular use. It also looks like the person who upholstered it didn't really know how to upholster very well. It's pretty cheaply done. But the functionality of it is what I like. It has more drawers than I ever need in a stool. Actually, all I really use are these side containers that fold up. This is nice because when you're not using them, they stay up out of the way, and then you can quickly unbutton it and it falls down. Then you have these pockets on both sides, and they're lined with a magnetic material, so anything metal you throw in there will just stick to it. for the most part. So for those reasons, I don't promote this particular rolling stool, but I've put a link in the video description to one that I think I'd actually like to have one day. Running out of space. Number 8 on the list is something a little more simple. It's a magnetic bowl. This one's made by Performance Tool, which I don't remember where I got it. Is it Harbor Freight? But I also have this smaller one that's made by Pittsburgh, which is a Harbor Freight brand. And this one's terrible because the magnet always comes off. It just wasn't glued on very well, and I never re-glued it. So the only thing holding it to the bowl is magnetism itself. And you can imagine if you have the bowl full of stuff and then the magnet pops off, all the metal stuff in there will fall out, or it could fall out. Fun fact, I filled this thing with parts about 6 or 7 months ago when we still lived in Oregon, and I can't remember what these go to. It's been sitting out on top of the toolbox since we moved here, and I've been trying to remember, but these screws look like they came out of my Jeep, but there's nothing disassembled in my Jeep, so I have no idea. But anyway, the magnetic bowl from Performance Tool is really good. I use it all the time and highly recommend. While we're on the topic of magnets, number 9 is my magnet on a stick. Perfect for when you drop a nut, bolt, anything metal, and you can't reach it. There's a very strong magnet on the end of this. It's probably a neodymium magnet. And as long as you put it in the vicinity of what you're trying to pick up, it'll pick it up. This one's also flexible, so you can get just about anywhere with it. But David, I dropped my nuts and they're made of plastic. What do I do? Well, that's why number 10 on the list is a nabber grabber. It's the same idea as the magnet on a stick, but without a magnet. Instead, you press the plunger on this end and claws come out on this end. Then you can pick up just about anything you want, whether or not it's attracted to magnets. It's also flexible like the magnet on a stick, but it doesn't hold its shape. All right, it's time for the bonus round, and I only have one bonus item for you today, but it's a really cool one. Allow me to set up a little demonstration here. Here we have a simple piece of paper. Let's make some mess. I'll put this mess right here where you can see it. And this is the hose from my air compressor. Why did I do that? Now let's do it again. Make another mess. Take my air hose, but this time let's remove this attachment and add this attachment. What is this thing? Does it blow air? Well, sort of. It uses compressed air to turn this into a vacuum. Now basically there's something inside here that directs the airflow up the handle and then this way, which causes a vacuum at this end, which is just brilliant. I learned about this in a video from another YouTube channel called Stuff Made Here, and it blew my mind. I had to buy one right away. Honestly, I haven't really used it much. It's just really cool, and I guess that's why it's today's bonus item. My neighbor's mowing his lawn right now. It's raining. We've been having thunderstorms for the last few days, and my neighbor just got his lawnmower out. I don't know what he's doing, but he's like right there. Come on, man. Oh well, the show must go on. Anyway, the only real downside to this is that it's really only good for picking up big things like those chunks of paper, because if you try to suck up any fine particles with it, like sawdust or dirt or dust, it just goes right through the other end of this bag. So while this is really neat and fun and cool to show to people, it's not a replacement for your vacuum cleaner. And with that, we've come to the conclusion of this series on my favorite tools and non-tools. So I hope you got something out of it. And if you haven't seen the first 2 videos yet, check for links in the pinned comment below. If you enjoy videos like this, let me know by liking the video, leaving a comment, subscribing, buying merch, buying any of these tools from the links in the video description, or by becoming a member of the channel by clicking the join button under this video on YouTube. Once again, thank you for watching. Sorry about the lawnmower, and until next time, just keep throwing money at it. Number 4 on today's list is a non-tool that we all need. But David, I dropped my nuts and they're made of plastic. Well, that's why number 10 is a nabber grabber. I'm dripping. We're dripping. We're dripping like Scottie Pippen.